Hello, I'm Brendan Mitchell and welcome to this episode of the CAPS Conversation series. On this episode I have with me Nick Nelson. Nick and I used to work together over 20 years ago in Bangkok, and it's a great honour to have you here, Nick.
Good to see you, mate.
It's great to see you. Now, you grew up in Adelaide, the city of churches.
I did indeed.
And I'm sure that Adelaide's grown a lot over the last 20 years, and I know you've been back a few times.
Have done, yes.
Yep. Now, after you completed high school, did you go directly to the University of Adelaide to study anthropology, or...?
No, I did not. I worked for a while, and then I realised that the work I was doing was not for me, so I went to university.
And I understand that you enjoyed the units there and the program there. What were some of the units that make up a degree in anthropology?
Well, I did quite a lot. I studied philosophy, anthropology, archaeology, a bit of women's studies. I think that's about it. Yeah, a lot. So it was quite a good, diverse program.
Yes, and some of the subjects there, particularly in the area of philosophy, I'm quite interested in the philosophy for children movement that is really growing in the world today. Mm-hmm. Have they helped you in your education career?
Not directly. I did study a lot of moral philosophy, which has helped me to teach where I'm teaching today. I do not teach children, as you know. I teach adults. And so the moral philosophy, I think, was probably the most relevant to me.
Yeah. And then from there, you moved into archaeology at Flinders Uni.
I did, yes.
And what was the draw card or the motivation for both studying archaeology and going to Flinders?
I had decided I was going to be an archaeologist. Flinders had the best program, so I enrolled there in an honours degree, graduated as an archaeologist, and then promptly left South Australia.
Yes, you did, and that's where we met all those years ago in Asia. And what was the plan? Was it? I think it might have been Japan at one stage.
The plan was to work in Tokyo as a teacher, to accrue enough money to travel, to backpack, and then return to Australia in the summer and dig as an archaeologist.
But now you've been one of the mainstays of English language education, testing, training, both in corporate and the private sector in Thailand for many years now. But in between times, you went to Charles Darwin, or what was known as the Northern Territory University. It was known as then, to pursue a Master of Linguistics.
I did indeed.
How was your time in Darwin? Back then it must have been about the year 2000, I think.
2001 I arrived in Darwin. Darwin's a good place. I enjoyed Darwin. I was there for about 18 months approximately, a bit less. I was doing a master's there, and my plan was to come back to Thailand to teach, and I got sidetracked.
Yeah, you certainly did, and you got sidetracked. I wouldn't say sidetracked, you got actually upward moving when you went to Sydney, and it probably would have been around the boom time of vocational education in Australia.
Yes, it was.
And then you moved into Director of Studies type positions, yes?
I was a teacher for several years, and then I was the Director of Studies of the vocational arm of our college, and I was Director for about 6 years, I guess.
Yeah, and life in general in Sydney, you quite enjoyed that from my understanding for many years.
Life in Sydney was pretty good.
Yeah.
Very expensive, but it was enjoyable while I was there.
I'd say it would have been a bit cheaper when you were there than what it is now.
Possibly, most likely. It was still very expensive though.
Yeah, and then after 10 years in Sydney, or almost 10 years, you packed up and you moved back to Thailand.
I did. My plan was always to move back to Thailand at some point. I became a little bit bored in Sydney. I was up here on holiday, I was offered a job, and so I moved back.
Yeah, you did a really good thing before you moved back here, rather than some people that you and I have seen over many years that just move on the whim. you had the job set up before you came. I think it was about 6 months in advance, wasn't it?
I did. It was several months in advance. So once I came back, the job began more or less within a week of arriving. Unexpectedly, by the way. I thought I had a bit of holiday time.
No, I know the amount of work you do and the types of industry you've worked in and trained in. It's incredibly diverse.
It is.
I know what you've done. But prior to moving back,
Mm-hmm.
you went to Macquarie University.
I did start a degree, a master's at Macquarie University in museum studies, and my intention was to move into that industry at some level, but unfortunately things went a bit sideways. The course was cancelled. I only had a very short time to try to complete that course, and I was here at the time. I just started the new job at the university, and I didn't feel I could dedicate enough time to both of those areas, so I did drop that in the end.
Now, one of the things, we'll have a little bit of a talk about Thai students in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've got a lot more experience with them than me, particularly in the ESL field,
Mm-hmm.
across both academic purposes, test preparation,
Mm-hmm.
and general subjects at the
Mm-hmm.
university. What general subjects do you teach at the university for students?
The general subjects would be several levels of general English, and then we move into subjects such as academic presentation preparation, exam preparation, subjects in basically those areas.
Is that both at undergraduate and postgraduate?
It's mostly undergraduates.
But you also have a steering role, if not the direct overseeing role of the language journal there. Is that still going?
I do. I edit the journal, but predominantly I edit the English abstracts. Most of our journal articles are in Thai.
Okay. Now, in terms of a few pointers for what Thai students could perhaps focus on in their English acquisition,
Mm-hmm.
particularly for those who want to work in an international environment and who potentially would like to study abroad, what do you think they need to really focus on?
The students need to focus on fluency. They need to spend a lot more time interacting in English, either with other Thai students or with non-Thai students, either native speakers or non-native speakers. They definitely need to continue speaking outside of the classroom. We have a large holiday period. A lot of the students do not speak English in that period, and their English level drops noticeably.
What about the writing skills? Have you noticed improvement over time, particularly with the usage of social media and things like that from when we first came here 20 plus years ago until now?
To some extent, yes, but there's been a lot of influence of social media on writing skills, so we find that a lot of the younger students will use a lot of vocabulary and grammar which is just not appropriate for the academic setting. Yeah.
Now, in terms of someone, I remember we were in our 20s when we came here and embarked on a education career, if you'd like. What sort of advice would you give to people seeking to potentially come not only to Southeast Asia, but a lot of people go and potentially used to go to South America?
Teachers, you mean? Or
yeah,
general?
teachers, potential teachers.
Teachers, I would say do your homework ahead of time. Understand the culture of the country you're moving into, the requirements to work legally. Ensure that you have the correct qualifications, and definitely research who you're going to work for, where you're going to work, the locations, and contact the schools, the companies, the universities, whatever they are, ahead of time, so that you're not walking into
The unexpected.
a mess. Yes. You need to really be a lot more directed than you would be, say, back in Sydney.
Yeah, and I would say back when we came here, I think it was a lot easier as well. The world was less globalised.
Things were a lot easier. There was a lot more of a demand for unqualified teachers. Today in Thailand, if you're unqualified and you lack the correct ESL teaching qualifications, it can be very, very difficult. Thailand is no longer a particularly cheap country. It's quite expensive, and you really need to know what you want to do. You need to be a lot more self-directed.
But coming back to the expenses it's some of the street food is still reasonably priced and things like that, and accommodation, I think,
Yes.
as well.
Food, accommodation, alcohol can be well priced if you're in the correct areas and you know how to order in Thai. Learning a bit of Thai, by the way, doesn't go astray. Picking the correct area to live in. The area we're in at the moment is not the cheapest area to live or socialise in. But yes, it's certainly much cheaper than a city like Sydney.
But you really want to live, I would say, close to where your main point of employment is as well.
Yep, absolutely.
It's quite crowded, but it's fun, it's wonderful, and the culture here is spectacular.
It is.
And it's a happy type of life.
It is. I would definitely recommend living close to your primary employer.
Me too. Maybe one day I'll come back and live close to you again, Nick.
That would be wonderful.
It's wonderful to see you as always.
Good to see you,
Thank
mate.
you for